He thought he knew everything about the people around him. After all, he was wealthy, successful, and admired by everyone in his city. But one small mistake would shatter his assumptions and teach him a lesson about kindness that he would never forget. It all started on a chilly Monday morning, when he noticed something unusual about his maid. Something small, almost invisible, but it made him laugh in a way that he would soon regret. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Story Hub, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We share heartfelt stories every week that remind us just how powerful kindness can be. Now, let's get into this story. Main story. Jonathan Hayes was a man who had built his fortune from nothing. By the time he turned 40, he had a sprawling mansion, sleek cars, and every luxury anyone could dream of. People admired him, envied him, and sometimes even feared him. He had a sharp mind, but not a very soft heart. To him, people were either useful or irrelevant. That Monday morning, Jonathan noticed Mary, his longtime maid, struggling with a set of heavy curtains. She was short, her hands rough from years of labor, and her face carried a quiet exhaustion that seemed permanent. "Mary, why don't you just get someone stronger to do that?" Jonathan called from the top of the stairs, smirking. "Or do you need a step stool for your little arms?" Mary looked up, startled. A flicker of hurt passed over her face, but she didn't reply. She just nodded and tried harder, dragging the curtains with a determined frown. Jonathan laughed under his breath and shook his head, convinced he was seeing the world exactly as it was. People like him were powerful, people like her were, well, servants. Over the next few days, he couldn't help but notice her again. There was something different about Mary, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. She moved quietly, almost like a shadow, never complaining, never asking for praise. But her eyes held a spark. A quiet intelligence, almost defiant, that made Jonathan uneasy. One afternoon, Jonathan's teenage daughter, Emily, invited Mary into the study to help organize some old books. Jonathan didn't pay much attention until he heard Mary laughing softly as she read an inscription in one of the volumes. He was curious. "What are you laughing at, Mary?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed. Mary hesitated. "Oh, just a funny note someone left in this book years ago." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Funny, huh? I didn't know you were much of a reader." Mary smiled politely, but there was a glint in her eyes. "I enjoy reading, sir." That night, Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about her. Something about the way she spoke, the way she seemed so composed, was nagging at him. He decided to look into her background, mainly out of curiosity, but maybe, deep down, to confirm his assumptions. What he found stunned him. Mary had not only finished college, but she had graduated with honors in literature. She had written essays that were published in local journals. She could have had a career, a life full of opportunities, but life had not been kind to her. She had taken on work as a maid to support her younger siblings after their parents died in a car accident. Every dollar she earned went straight to them, ensuring they stayed in school, fed, and clothed. Jonathan felt a strange mix of guilt and admiration. Here he had been mocking her intelligence and strength, and yet she had quietly carried burdens he could never imagine, all while maintaining her dignity and grace. The next morning, he watched her from across the room as she polished the silverware. He remembered the cruel joke he had made about her arms. His heart tightened. He wanted to apologize, but the words felt heavy in his mouth. Instead, he decided to test himself, to see if he could show even a small act of kindness without making it about himself. "Mary," he said, approaching her, I think I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have mocked you the other day. That was wrong of me." Mary looked up, surprised. She didn't smile, she didn't scold, she simply nodded. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." Jonathan realized then that kindness was simple but powerful. It didn't need grandeur or fanfare. A sincere acknowledgement of someone's struggles could make more difference than any luxury or wealth. Days passed, and Jonathan found himself treating Mary differently. He asked her opinions on things he had never cared about before. He listened to her stories of the books she had read, the struggles she had faced, and the small joys she found in helping her siblings. He even invited her to dinner with his family, something he had never done with a member of his staff. One evening, during a casual conversation in the kitchen, Jonathan asked, "Mary, why didn't you pursue a career instead of this?" Mary paused, then smiled softly. Life doesn't always give us the paths we want, sir. But it does give us choices. I chose to care for my siblings. I chose to make sure they had a chance. I do what I can, where I am. That's all any of us can do. Jonathan was struck by her words. He realized that kindness wasn't about money or status. It was about choice. Every day, Mary made choices that reflected generosity, sacrifice, and love even when no one was watching. And here he was, wealthy and powerful, but blind to the simple humanity in front of him. Weeks later, an opportunity came to reveal the truth in a way that would leave a lasting impression. Jonathan had invited some business associates to his home for a dinner party. The conversation turned to education, careers, and success. Jonathan's voice carried across the room as he spoke about investments and achievements, until Mary quietly interjected with a thoughtful point. Everyone paused. Her insight was sharp, eloquent, and more informed than anyone expected. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, and whispers began to circulate. She's incredible, where did she learn that? Jonathan felt a swell of pride and humility at the same time. He stood up and addressed the room. Everyone, I think I owe you all an explanation. This remarkable woman is Mary, my maid. But that title tells you nothing about her. Mary has a brilliant mind, a generous heart, and has sacrificed more than I could ever imagine for her family. I mocked her once, and I was wrong. Today, I am proud to call her not only my colleague but my friend. The room erupted in applause, but Mary merely smiled and shook her head. I didn't do it for recognition, sir, she said quietly. I just do my best. Jonathan looked around at the gathered guests and realized something profound. Kindness was contagious. By acknowledging Mary's humanity, he had encouraged others to see it too. And in doing so, he felt a transformation within himself that no amount of money could ever buy you. From that day on, Jonathan made it a point to treat every person in his life with the respect and dignity they deserved. He invested in Mary's education further, helping her start a small scholarship fund for children who, like her siblings, needed opportunities. Together, they created programs to support families in crisis, providing mentorship, resources, and hope. Mary never asked for accolades or thanks. She continued her work quietly, choosing kindness over recognition. But Jonathan had learned a lesson he would carry forever. Sometimes, the smallest acts of understanding, compassion, and respect can transform not just one life, but an entire community. Months later, Jonathan reflected on that chilly Monday morning, the day he mocked Mary. He remembered the pain in her eyes and the spark that had silently challenged him. And he realized that the truth Mary carried was more powerful than his wealth, his pride, or his judgment. The truth was simple: kindness matters. Always, Jonathan had thought he was teaching Mary a lesson that day, but in reality, she had taught him, and the lesson was one he would never forget. Conclusion: kindness isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. Sometimes, it's about seeing the humanity in someone we underestimate. It's about listening, acknowledging, and offering respect without expecting anything in return. Jonathan Hayes learned this the hard way, but Mary's quiet courage changed his heart forever. And her story reminds us all that the world is full of people quietly making sacrifices, showing resilience, and embodying kindness in ways we might never notice unless we choose to see. So today, look around you. Recognize someone's effort, say a kind word, or offer help without being asked. Small acts, performed with a genuine heart, can ripple out in ways you might never imagine, because sometimes, the person you least expect to inspire you ends up changing your life entirely, and that's the power of kindness.